Everyone. Again, my name is Terry Burgess, and I will be discussing the Dollar Tree Logistics case for our third case study for BA 579 Supply Chain Management. Now, I will go ahead and dive into the first of the three questions that is posed for this case report. The first question is, discuss the components of the cost structure of the Dollar Tree system as outlined in Exhibit 4, which I did include here on this slide as a refresher while we go through this. And how do these components behave as the number of distribution centers in the system changes? So the cost structure outlined in Figure 4 is broken down into four components: inventory carrying cost, total inbound cost, total distribution center cost, and total outbound cost. The inventory carrying cost is exactly how it sounds. It's the cost incurred to manage and store the current inventory. The inbound cost in this example counts both trucking and ocean container shipping cost to get the product from whoever makes the product to the actual distribution centers. The outbound cost is the trucking cost to ship the goods to the individual stores. And finally, the total DC cost, from my understanding, is the cost to maintain the centers themselves. So, when you increase the number of distribution centers, it can be expected that the total outbound cost percentage will actually decrease. The more distribution centers that you have, the closer they are to the stores they serve, and thus the decreased cost to transport the inventory from the distribution center to the endpoint, which is the store. Conversely, the more distribution centers you have in the system, you will increase the percentage of inbound cost as there are more places to ship the inventory to initially, so you have a cost incurred there. One could also reasonably expect the inventory and carrying cost percentage to go up as well with the more distribution centers that you have. As the more you have, the costlier it is to manage the current inventory. Now to go to the second question. How important is economies of scale for the distribution centers? Why is utilization a key metric in this context? And what other operation strategy opportunities should Dollar Tree consider to further decrease their supply chain costs? For this one, I don't think it's possible to exaggerate how important economies of scale are to distribution centers. The larger and more efficient the distribution center, the more of a decrease in overhead cost and unit price that the company has. The lower a company is able to offer the unit price of an item, the more competitive they are. And of course, the more competitive they are, the more money they can make. Utilization in this context is a metrics about how efficiently a company is using their distribution center space. For a business like Dollar Tree that has low margins on the products that they do sell, and they depend on a very high turnover of inventory to remain profitable, it's very important to maximize that utilization of the space of the distribution centers. It's a must to maintain, stay in business. From what I've been able to read with this case report, honestly, it appears to me that Dollar Tree is already doing a pretty good job in keeping their supply chain costs to a minimums. Some thoughts that do come to mind to improve efficiency is converting the two current distribution centers that are currently not automated, they're manually being staffed now, to being automated, which in the long term could improve efficiency and decrease cost as these distribution centers would be able to function with less employees if more things were automated. Now to get to the final question, which of the two options for distribution center capacity expansion do you recommend? Justify your choice by calculating the distribution center facility costs and outbound trucking costs. Consider both quantitative and qualitative factors, and test the sensitivity of the costs to the forecast of sales growth. First off, I just want to say I'm in agreement that something needs to be done by the company. The company states that once a distribution center utilization rate goes above 75%, that's when they need to start seriously considering more distribution centers or an expansion of current ones to prevent bottlenecks, etc., of goods not being able to get to the stores. Per the case study that we're going through, the current utilization rate at Briar Creek, Pennsylvania is 92%, so we're already well above that 75% threshold. Looking at their own calculations in Exhibit 11, my first impression is that it makes more sense to build the new distribution center in Hartford, Connecticut. So that was the option I would pick, at least on an initial thought. By these calculations, they expect that if they expand the Briar Creek site, that the new utilization rate would be about 85% by 2007, which again, as I just stated, it's already past the internal 75% marker that the company uses to start considering a new DC. So it seems like it's not as permanent a solution as building the new distribution center in Hartford. Now, with adding the new site in Hartford, Connecticut by 2007, both distribution centers are still below that 75% threshold, but they're close to it. So the spaces their projections show are being used well, but they're not being overused to the point where it can create downstream issues. Creating the new distribution center would also decrease the average distance from the distribution center to the stores for both the distribution centers, not only the new one, but the Briar Creek location as well. This one you would expect to decrease the outbound cost, cost that is the cost of getting the goods to the individual stores. Of course, the only caveat being with a distribution center, you would expect both inbound and inventory carrying costs to increase. When I did my own calculations on the outbound trucking cost, the expansion to a new facility in Hartford option did indeed come out to be more cost effective as far as those outbound costs were concerned. My numbers came up with it was roughly a 30% overall decrease over the 3 years in the outbound cost versus just expanding at the current site. Of course, the big caveat with all these numbers are the current projections from the company accurate? If, for example, sales growth slows or even decreases, it might make more sense to have had expanded the existing site to minimize inbound inventory and just the total cost to maintain the facility. But as per the current projections, I believe my final recommendation is to build the new site in Hartford, Connecticut to help keep that utilization rate below 75% and stable long term and to minimize outbound cost. As always, feel free to leave any comments that you feel relevant. That's this case study for this course, and I hope each of you have a pleasant day.